Hey, y'all, watch this.
This is
RedPubPod,
a podcast
RedPubPod.
from Redhawk Publications. RedPubPod.
RedPubPod. RedPubPod.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening out there in podcast land. This is RedPubPod. I'm Robert Knipe here with Patty Thompson and Executive Director Richard Eller, and we have a special guest today, the big kahuna, the
Top
big
man,
dog,
big dog.
the top man. Garrett D. Hinshaw is in the house. Let's hear it. Well, Dr. Hinshaw, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's so great for you all to have me in, and looking forward to having a good conversation with you guys today.
We're going to turn the tables on this a little bit and let you quiz us.
Perfect, because I've got all kinds of questions I'd like to ask y'all. First of all, I want to hear how great Patty is.
That's so thoughtful of you.
That's
Dr.
easy to do. She's our magic person.
Yeah, she's our fearless leader. She's the one that keeps us all straight.
She is.
Yeah.
She has been, honestly, in all seriousness, she has been the system that this program needed.
You know, this whole initiative was just a real entrepreneurial idea that you all had, and it's had such a great impact on our community, and I'm so thankful for the work that y'all do every day. But I'm going to grill y'all today about some things that I think everybody needs to hear, because there's a lot of questions about what Redhawk Publications really is and what it does for this community. So I'd just like to hear tell me about the mission and vision behind this initiative.
I think our fearless leader should take that one.
Okay, Patty. Actually, we think we're following the mission of the college in educating people. We don't always do it in a classroom, though we have started that recently. But through our authors, be it the ideas they come up with as poets or novelists, or the research they do as historians, or any other genre that they engage in, they are teaching our community, especially about us, since this is not a local publisher, because we've published people all over the country, but as far as the mission of the college to instruct people, we just do it in a rather different way.
Yeah, and I see those impacts when I talk with my trustees. They're hearing about the impact that you all are having in the community. But what sets this publishing apart from others in the industry sector?
Well, we're one of very few, 3 in the country, that are generated out of a community college, right?
As a literary press, not an academic press. That's colleges and universities, and they have them. You can throw a dime and find one. But as far as a literary press, open to public submissions, yeah, we're one of 3.
And really, the entire thing was kind of modeled after your Manufacturing Solutions Center. Richard and I were talking when we were working on the polio book about how, a book is a product, and a book needs distribution, and a book needs manufacturing, and there needs to be work with the client to help the client promote the product. And I'm looking at what you were doing at the Manufacturer Solutions Center with things like socks that delivered pharmaceuticals to people over time, and helping people spend their grant money responsibly and get the most out of their money. And I thought, why can't we do that for art?
Yeah, I think that's the entrepreneurial spirit behind this whole project, and it's why I got so excited about it from the beginning. I have supported it from the beginning, and we'll continue to do that because this is unique. I mean, it is not what people would normally think of a community college doing, but you all have taken it to the next level. What type of genres do you publish, and how do you pick those projects that you're going to commit your time and energies and expertise into?
Well, I'm the acquisitions editor, and by the way, I discovered that along my journey. I didn't know what I was until one day I started Googling, this is what I am. I'm the person who 99% of the time gets the manuscripts, whether we've asked an author for them or if they come in unsolicited. Once they come in, I send them to beta readers, because I don't want to be the only person who makes that decision. That's not fair. I don't want my biases to creep in. I have beta readers who read them. They send me notes. If the notes seem overwhelmingly good, I will do a little read. We discuss the marketability. Is it good? Great. But will it sell? That's another story. And then if it's a bunch of green lights and yeses, then we enter into a contract. And we put them on a pipeline of when we see the book eventually being published. If it doesn't get accepted, this is where being an educational institute and being unique comes in. If it's not accepted, but we see some merit, we will recommend that, you know what, here's a short list of some editors, do a little bit more work, get some peer reviewers, and bring it back. And we've had several authors do that. And if it's really just not up to snuff and there's no marketability, I'm very kind when I say, I'm sorry, at this time we can't do your book.
And this outlook, this way of looking at poetry and history books, there's been a whole other industry grown in the last 6 or 7 years. There are companies out there who didn't exist when we started this, who are now in existence doing editing work, doing developmental work with our authors. We've come in contact with some very high-end editors, such as Ron Rash's brother, Tom Rash, who looks at all of Ron's stuff before it goes to publication, is working with some of the authors now, and we're bringing in some of that stuff. But a lot of what we do is because it's people from our area, and it's subjects that we are interested in, that we feel like the rest of the area around here in CVCC service area would be interested in these subjects. So we don't say no to a lot, but sometimes to our own chagrin because of the human capital it takes to manufacture the product and get it to market. But we do have these cottage industries that have grown up. What's the name of Mia's company?
I was just thinking about it. One of our advisory members is Maya Kierce.
Maya.
And she's got a small publishing company called Anonymous Authors.
Yeah.
So she does some ghostwriting. She does editing. She does layout. She publishes. Now, there's a fee for it, and we don't charge. But I'll be honest with you, when there's somebody here that the book isn't quite our thing, I will send her our books that we've rejected. And she's been picking them up, and I'm impressed. I mean, so in essence, we're also helping a local small, cottage
publishing
industry.
outfit, yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we're doing is we're kind of piggybacking off of the college's main mission, because when we have those authors that aren't quite ready or need some help, this fall we've jumped into teaching a class on that subject.
Yeah. It got to the point where you realize there are so many people coming from McDowell County, Burke, Lenore Caldwell. About 5 different counties are represented in the workshop that we just started last week, and it was the first time. And I have a waiting list. I've got 11 people already signed up for January. So this is another way for us to help those authors that are not quite there, but you can see that they're committed and passionate about it. We have a very special program taught by one of our authors who's really targeting what they can do to make that work a better piece so that they can resubmit or find another publisher.
And Rhonda Browning-White, the teacher instructor in the workshop, is also an example of how this program and the college itself is kind of a magnet to people who have relocated here, because Rhonda and her husband, they came from Florida, and the very first thing she heard about was this little small press that could. And, she's on the phone with Patty, and before you know it, we've got a manuscript from her, and there's a whole relationship there. And what she's doing makes her feel at home here in Catawba County. She's glad to meet people that are, literary-minded, informational-minded, historical archiving, in mind. And that's been replicated throughout the past 5 or 6 years with this program, the drawing of people from the area who are interested in this kind of thing.
I think that's one of the most interesting things for me about what you all do is the amount of connection that you make outside of this college. You think about higher education and you look at the model that you all use. It's a business, and education is a business when we think about producing quality product and having it ready for the next step. So talk to me a little bit about an individual that wants to get started. What are the steps in the publishing process?
It can run any number of ways. We've had students. As a matter of fact, we've got a student now that's interested in publishing through us, and it's mainly to start with that idea of what do you want to say? What do you want to do? And we will help them shape how they do it, because it could, if they're a poet, then you need to go right and get somebody to look at it, start to get that kind of affirmation or critique that'll help you develop the product. Then when you've got a product, something that you think can work, that's when you bring it to us, and we'll continue to help you shape it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options. You know, like I say, if it's ready to go, it comes from a noted editor. We know that this is going to be, it's vetted. And then we get, the 2 students that have come to me within the past year, currently at CVCC, and their works needed a little work, and I gave them some nice marching orders, and I hope to see them back.
Now, me, I see this program as like life in an emergency room. Everybody has got an emergency.
They want to get their book out.
And it winds up on my desk. And then there's sick people coming in the side door. There's people coming in, and Patty gets on me because she'll say, like, look, I saw a proof laying on the desk the other day that's not in my pipeline. What's going on here? And I go, like, well, that was a former student, and she did a little book of poetry, and I told her that I'd throw it together for her, and Patty's eyebrows go up and down, and she goes, like, you've got to put that in the system. And I'm like going, yeah, I know, but...
Because that gives us our number, and we're inching dangerously close to 200 books here.
Yeah, we put together 200 books in the past several years, and a lot of those, well, not the majority of them, but at least 20, 25 of those were done during the COVID lockdown. When you sent us home for our safety during the COVID lockdown, Richard and I got to work on doing the book for Hickory, and at the same time, we worked on Austin Allran sent us a manuscript that we were able to decode and put together as a book, and probably 20, 22, 23 other poetry books, because I didn't want this program to disappear in COVID. I didn't want it to become another victim of that disruption. And thankfully, you had belief in us to where when we came back, you let us just keep running with it. So we appreciate that.
By the way, the Hickory book is still on sale. There's limited numbers of copies available, but now on sale at Barnes & Noble.
Yeah, Barnes & Noble and Tasteful Beans.
Our sponsor.
Tasteful Beans.
Yeah, Tasteful Beans. Downtown Hickory.
Absolutely.
They're our sponsor.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
our one and only sponsor,
Yep.
but the best sponsor.
We'll take all the sponsors we can get. So when you're thinking about this program, this Redhawk Publications, this isn't what community colleges do.
But they should.
Yeah, they absolutely should, and I'll tell everyone that's what they should be doing. But how important is marketing, and how do you market what we do here and what our capacity is? I mean, you think about the individuals that we've connected with. You just mentioned Austin Allran, a county commissioner, a board trustee member. He's got a book that we've worked with. We've got national role figures out there that we've worked with that have really just, when I look at the quality of what we put out, how do we get that word out even better?
Well, we started, one of the problems that you have is that, you know how it works at a community college. We're all kind of working on a shoestring. And so we began with word of mouth and the traditional social media outlets. And I think that's kind of still how we do it. We try to be as innovative as we possibly can with those outlets and expand them as far as we can. But part of it is we've networked, and Patty is an absolute master at this, at networking to be able to figure out who's got something that might be publishable that we want to be in business with.
And there was a time, of course, when I first started, Richard and Robert were saying, market the program, get us manuscripts beyond just poetry, and poetry's we love doing, but things that are a little different. And it's now 4 years in, my anniversary in November. I don't have to market what we do anymore. Awesome. Sometimes I don't like to go to events because people come to me. I have a book. That's a good thing, right?
Oh, yeah, good trouble.
Yeah, the events were a huge part of it. I mean, somebody would come in and say, I came to hear this author talk tonight, and look, this is a real book. You guys did this? And we'd say, yes, we did this. And they'd say, well, I think I've got a book. One is a guy named Steve Hill, Dr. Steve Hill from out of Statesville, who did a book with us of how many acres is the downtown part of Statesville?
About 8, I think.
Yeah, it's called In the Shadow of the Clock, and it's just this basic little small part of Statesville, North Carolina, and he does 200 years of history in pictures and text. And it's been one of our best-selling books, especially through him, because he is the author. He does a lot of his own marketing. So a lot of the marketing comes from the writers themselves, because they know that it behooves them to throw a bunch of their work in their trunk and go.
And that's what we want.
Go.
We want a partnership with our authors because they know the market in terms of who might be interested in this. And then we encourage them to go anywhere and everywhere. I'm going next week down to Mooresville to talk about the furniture book, and that's coming up on 2 years old, but it's one of those evergreen subjects. And speaking of Steve Hill, he's got a new one that's we've got right now called Statesville After Dark that tells you about all the unsavory folks that came out of Statesville. That really kind of replicates the ghost tour that he does in downtown Statesville. And he's got a new facility that's going to open pretty soon that has all of his collection there. It's great. But he's one of those COVID guys that he said during COVID he sat down and wrote this thing and lined it out and brought us a prototype of it, and it was perfect. He is probably one of our most perfect authors because he brings it in ready to go.
And we had a lady from Roadhiss who during COVID she took decades old cassette tapes of interviews with people who were in their 80s and actually wore out several old cassette tape players. She kept buying them off eBay as she transcribed all of these things. And from that, we have a 600 and some odd page book called Weaving the Heart Threads of a Mill Village. Yeah, and it's about Roadhiss.
And I think every resident in Roadhiss bought it.
Wow.
So that was a good payday.
It's been a huge. Well, the best thing about it was the payday went to the town of Roadhiss.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
right.
Rick,
Justice.
Rick Justice bought the books wholesale and took them down to the city hall and peddled them out of there. And they were able to build some cash for things that they wanted to do that was outside the venue of any control by the state or the town or anybody like that. So Tanja Smith,
she's a hustler. But I will say one thing that's important is in the contract process, we make sure from day one people understand we are 3 people and a half-time graphic designer. We do not have a marketing and publicity staff. I typically say, you are not going to be on the Today Show tomorrow. And that we absolutely need to have this be a partnership. We don't want you just selling 12 books to your family and friends. So we don't require them to buy 75 or 100 books, but we do ask them to have a plan on how you plan to sell 75 or 100 books, because then it gets us back into the black.
Well, they're the best billboard for their book because they're the author and they know it and that sort of thing. But he was talking about Rick Justice in the town of Roadhiss because they're getting ready to do big things. But it was an odd setup because it's revenue back to a municipality, just as the sales of our books are revenue back to the community college and kind of a non-state source of income for the school.
Yeah, you think about this program. We're in I think our 8th or 9th year of existence, and I say this as a compliment because I am a part of this group. But you are the Island of Misfits. That's what people on this campus think, and I'm right there in the middle of you. What are the challenges that this type of initiative that you're facing when we're trying to stay afloat and stay productive during even challenging financial times?
Exhaustion.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because we got so, we're so new. But, the big thing, in my opinion, is we're just so different from what the college does that it has taken a while, and it's an ongoing process, to kind of help people understand what it is we do and why we do it. Yeah. Because you get a lot of people, what? That's just a waste of the college resources. But we've also had people, rather influential folks, that said, we think this is a good use of the taxpayer dollar to be doing this, to educate people outside the classroom by reading one of our books.
And if you're a real collaborator and a brainstormer, you can always start thinking about what can we do to help other departments on this campus.
Yep.
It takes a special person to start thinking about it. We're really good at brainstorming. So if someone comes in here and has a seed of an idea, before they leave, they've got marching orders.
Oh, they're
what can we do?
overwhelmed.
Yeah.
We have overwhelmed more than one person who says, "My goodness, I've got a list of things to do." And we learned that from you.
As we always get.
Okay, here's
what you need to do.
Yeah, here's what you need to do.
Here's what you need to do, but there's
also-
no direction or detail in it.
Well,
But that allows us creativity.
but see, you
There you
trust
go.
us with the agency to do that ourselves,
Right.
and that's part of a collaboration, is being able to trust your partner in what you're doing and know that they're going to deliver, and
That's how you get a misfit toy to fit.
yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, is to give them the creative outlet they need to say, well, we can build this thing from scratch, and now we're, as you say, in our 8th, 9th year, we're doing pretty good.
And we still have to pinch every penny and count every
Oh, sure.
every paper clip.
Yeah.
But there's a two-pronged aspect to this too. When Patty mentioned, helping out, different programs and things like that. Originally, we had 5 or 6 textbooks that were designed specifically for specific courses for our stakeholders, our students. And we've recently lost those because of the Cengage relationship. We'd like to get those back, if anything, because they're scaffolding kind of mechanisms that help students understand more about what the course is expecting of them. And you even said yourself when you saw the very first one that if you'd had something like that in college that kind of outlined from A to Z what the course was going to be about, what it expected from you, it would have made your time in classroom a little easier.
Yeah, my GPA would have definitely been higher than it was.
Well,
No
and
question about it. So, yeah.
And I think those books that we did, I think they did that. And so I'd like to get back to that because, again, here's another revenue stream for instructors because they make royalties on the books. They also are vested in the books because they're going to our printers and they're printing these
Supplemental materials,
worksheets and things out at a high rate of printing cost, when we can do them at a very small cost for the students to pay for them, and then the students have invested in it that they'll just not throw it away. It's something important to them, and it's professional looking.
Plus, it gives the instructor another opportunity to try to get across the information and his or her way of teaching it in a different, on a different avenue than the classroom instruction. Because the way the instructor is teaching it, as Robert has pointed out before, is different than, say, an instructor in Iowa or some other state. That gives them the focused opportunity to say to students, "This is how I think you can learn it best," and the book is just another way to do that.
Well, these projects that you take on yesterday was such an emotional moment for me when one of our maintenance guys brought me his book. And it was, you think about all the different connections that we're making and the value that we're creating for people. Tell me about some of the most significant things that we've done through Redhawk Publications, locally, nationally. What are you most proud of?
My vote would be the Dr. Jones book, because when we did the Untouchables documentary, and we had a whole day for that, and the town of Hickory had a Untouchables day, that was a great project in itself. But what it led to was one of the children of one of the Untouchables reaching out and saying thank you, and that developing into a relationship. And she, having the connection she did, was able to bring us Dr. Clarence Jones, who had done, I think this was his third book, and couldn't find a New York publisher for it, which is just shocked us. And when she said, "Would you guys be interested in it?" we said, "Yes, please." And that has been, in terms of prestige, because he just won Presidential Medal of Freedom and that sort of thing, a 93-year-old man who was Dr. King's lawyer and confidant and protector, in terms of his speech writing and that sort of thing. That's, to me, been the book I am most proud of, because, as Robert's pointed out, that adds to our understanding of the Civil Rights era by some of the information in that book that we didn't have before.
I was just thinking about the moment I went to a book event with Dr. Jones in Atlanta, and there were some folks from the Bay Area. He used to teach at Stanford and also University of San Francisco. And these really snobby people from Stanford who couldn't think of a better way to put it. They came to Dr. Jones's table and they picked up his book and they're like, "Oh, this is good looking. This is nice. Who published it?" And I'm like, "We did. Who are you with? Redhawk Publications. Where are you from? Community College in North Carolina." And it was like the whole thing was like they couldn't believe we did this. And I'm like, "Well, you guys could have, but they came to us." So.
That's right.
And I agree with the Dr. Jones book probably being the gemstone in our crown. But you just mentioned a book by one of the guys that works here, and I don't think that E. Campbell will mind if I tell a little bit of his story. His book is called Walking Out the Bible, and it is kind of like a little primer on how to live a spiritual life. And I suggested that he do this one morning. Earlier in the year, Everett had lost his wife. She passed away, and I was worried about him. Every day he would come in and he would give me a countdown. It's been so many days and so many hours since I lost Karen, and I said, "You need something to take your mind off of this." So the next day I get this kind of outline for this thing he'd like to do. And over the course of about a month, he writes this book. And he's probably been one of the best-selling writers we've had because of his own self-promotion. Yeah. And so many people, was going, "He wrote a book?" And I'd go like, "Why, does that surprise you?" Of course he did. He knows his stuff. Yeah. And that probably is one of my favorite things to have published. That and one of the sanctuary literary journals that we did back before COVID. There was a lady who was 74 years old who came by to pick up her complimentary copy. And she said, "I didn't know I was a poet." And I said, "Well, you're in there right on page 29. And she opened it up and she looked and she began to cry. And I said, "Well, ma'am, are you okay?" And she said, "I just never knew that I was a poet." She said, "My husband and I both have come back to school because we just got tired of the negativity on the TV. We just threw the TV out and we just said, we're going to go take some classes." So I took this class, this English class or a creative writing class or something, and you guys picked my poem. And she was so touched by that one page of poetry. And I thought, this is what you do this for. Yeah. It's not for the money. It's not for the prestige. It's not for the pictures in the paper. It's because this lady touched a part of herself that she didn't even know she had. Yeah. She didn't even know this existed in her, and she's 74 years old. And that's the stuff I like.
Well, I think that's the essence of why we do what we do. You think about the depth of the connection you make with the people that engage with you, and it's exceptional, and it will pay dividends. We may never, all of us may be gone before those dividends are realized, but it is definitely a huge return on investment when we make a difference in a person's life in terms of how they feel about themselves, or just getting their thoughts out and having it structured and seeing it in print. It's amazing. But I got a question for you, Richard, because and this is a little bit different. But how did this? What started all this? What happened?
I was coming off the Piedmont Airlines book, and I wanted to do something that was more localized. And in looking back on all the historical events that's happened in Catawba County, I came to the conclusion that the polio epidemic was the largest single thing that we could talk about from which Catawba County can be justly proud. And I began to think about it from not only a historical point of view, since I teach history, but also a sociological point of view and all these other ways. And I have a colleague that teaches law, and there was a court case associated with it. So I began to talk to these people to say, could we research the miracle? And that's what we turned it at first. But I knew I needed a partner. And so I went to my favorite English instructor and said, help! Because, the people were starting to pull this stuff in, and they had questions about grammar and organization and all that kind of stuff. And I knew that I couldn't do it. And so I went to Robert and said, I got this project. Would you be interested in editing it for me? And we didn't even at the time say, we'll see where it goes. But, I mean, that was the gist of it. And we put that book together, and we had an accompanying documentary. But it's sort of like when you first got here, I had said, if you'll get me some video editing equipment, because that's my life before CVCC, I will get you a documentary. And that was the Piedmont documentary. So it was easier to do the polio documentary after that. But we had book and documentary together. And then I think somewhere in that process, we said, well, if we can do this, we can do other stuff too, especially once we cleared the hurdle of a community college being a publisher, because we needed legally to remember those meetings.
Oh, yeah.
We need to get that settled. And once we found out that we could do that, because what is a book but education in some way, shape, or form, that we could begin doing other things. And we worked with the foundation to get funding for the Newton Then and Now, and that's when we brought in our photography instructor extraordinaire, Joe Young, and said, can you get your students to, would this be a class project? And it just sort of began to snowball, right?
Yeah, and he comes to me, don't let him sugarcoat it, he comes to me because he knows that I'm like him, I can't stay in my own lane. And I had made...
I heard that about you guys.
I think that's why you put us together.
I had made all the same people mad that he had made mad. So,
including me.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
Yeah, from time to time. Yeah.
So like at the end of every semester, I'm in Dr. Hinshaw's office going, look how much FTE I generated. Can I get a raise? And he would go like, oh yeah, okay, bye. But anyway, and it did. It kind of turned into this little poetry book about the Henry River Mill Village that we were working with Joe Young and Tim Peeler on, and then the Newton book came in and all of this stuff. And again, COVID was the COVID lockdown was a big part of it, because it gave us time to really put things together. And there was a huge learning curve. Our poor business office had to learn how to deal with these people who wanted to do things that had never been done before. And poor West Bunch, trying to understand. But they've all been troopers. They've all been wonderful people. And now they, when I talk to them, they're just like, okay, I'll see if I can get that done. And they'll ask how business is. And even Jennifer Ham reminded me one day, now make sure you make a profit on everything that you sell.
Yeah, we're getting that tattooed on our forehead. Yeah.
Because it took a lot of our funds that we had retained to do the Dr. Jones book.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were printing 4,000 copies of this book all at once from a national printer. And
that we distributed through UNC Press, so that was new territory for us
so
too.
There were times when Patty would say, "Can I get a stapler?" And I'd go, "I don't have any money to buy you a stapler. I mean, we're going to have to go to a thrift store and see if we can find one that way."
But we got our money back. We sold it out.
We sold it, and we've built it all back up, and things are kind of, they're still tight, but it still works. But again.
But speaking to us being the Isle of Misfit Toys, that's why Patty is absolutely essential, because she smooths out our rough edges and can go, what they really meant to say was this, and build bridges that Robert and I sometimes unknowingly have burnt. Yeah,
I have a tendency not to. I mean, that's just my makeup, and I'm 62 years old, and I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome when I was in my mid-40s. And I said, so that's what's been wrong with my ability to have interpersonal relationships. I never knew that. So I've learned a lot of skills since then that I didn't have before. So you'll notice that I don't cause nearly as much trouble as I used to.
Well, I'll just say that Patty saved you guys 100,000 times. I hear it out of the community and inside the college. So thank you, Patty, for everything that you do.
Yeah, will you pay for my Xanax?
Absolutely. So this is a continuously evolving type of thing, like any entrepreneurial idea does. It has things that spin off of it. Tell me a little bit about the Writer's Workshop and why you're starting to offer that type of initiative through Redhawk Publications.
Part of it, as I mentioned earlier, because I was looking at my I guess, ratio of what we accept versus what we reject, whether it's a kind reject or outright reject. And we thought, we're an educational institution. If we want to get these authors to get better, let's provide a very targeted workshop specifically for folks who have expressed interest in Redhawk. That does not mean that they're greenlit. That does not mean we're publishing them. But we are helping them with a professional who has taught the class before get their work in better shape and to create a work group. So that workshop, you could tell from day one when they started, they are bonding. They're probably going to end up kind of becoming their own little private work study group where they do peer review one another. They're just good to go. So we see it as a way to kind of streamline the process of getting them to get better manuscripts and to do some peer reviewing, submitting it. So that's kind of it. But like I say, the idea to continue to grow writers in this area, you can't put a number on that. That's an amazing opportunity that we're giving these adults to come back to school.
I love the fact that you're seeing the relationships being built, because to me, that's the core of any successful entity or initiative, is seeing those dots get connected.
That particular workshop was filled before the press release hit the newspaper. The word of mouth, our tentacles are spreading, and the guys know this, but we've got champions throughout the state of some darn well-regarded authors. You know, Ron Rash loves what we do. He sings our praises. Carter Monroe on the East Coast, he brags about us to any and everyone. We've got a bunch of poets in Pittsburgh that adore us. I mean, so it's just kind of interesting. One of my favorite books that we did, well, I don't know if it's my favorite book, but it was the most interesting, was the Dr. Howard's book.
We Want Them Infected.
We Want Them Infected. This was a random.
I was so nervous about that book.
Yeah, we all were. Yeah,
You really were.
Oh, yeah. That came to me like on a midnight in October 2 years ago. The doctor in Manhattan, who was boots on ground in Manhattan during COVID, he wanted to have his first book out on COVID. He wanted to be the first. So he kind of rushed us a little bit, but by God, it was the first book out. We were concerned because he had a target list of public officials. We didn't want him to do that.
Thanks to Austin Allran.
Yeah, you talk about your tentacles. I'm like, Austin, look
We
at
had
this.
a bona fide attorney to give us advice on that one.
And you know, to his credit, he's like, you know what? I had a chance to read your contract 3 or 4 times. You will not lose in court. Will you be sued? Yeah, you could. But at the same time, let's see what we can do to minimize it. So he was very helpful.
Awesome.
And the book came out, and that was the very first book where when we came back to work on Monday, we had like orders for 600 books.
Wow.
And it was like all hands on deck. We were all like,
ridiculous.
we never had anything like that before.
Yeah.
And they were going literally all over the country, all over the world.
All over the
All
world.
over the world.
Yeah, like nine countries.
Wow.
They were ordering them from all, and
Yeah.
through Amazon and Amazon's distribution network. When I was getting the royalty sheets in, I was having to convert from, francs and euros and Australian dollars and all of this stuff and that was also our first 5-figure royalty payment for
my God.
1 quarter
Yeah.
to Dr. Howard.
Well,
it's crazy.
you just mentioned 9 different countries. 9 different countries know who this little community college in Hickory is because of the work that Redhawk Publications is doing.
Ain't that a kick in the head?
Yeah, and one of
amazing.
our graphic designing students actually created the cover for that book.
Yep.
And I remember showing her, I'm like, go to TikTok back then. It was TikTok. I'm like, and some German guy in German is showing the book, and he's, doing a review of the book. And I'm like, your book is being shown in Germany, and she was so proud.
Yeah, Ashlyn Blake.
Yeah.
She was great.
That's awesome.
She was a great student.
Yeah, because we also have employed some of our better, our upper level students from the graphic arts program. And so any way that we can incorporate other disciplines on this campus into helping get these books out, we do it.
Yeah, last semester we had an intern, a young man named Jeremiah, who was a business student here, and he was our first business intern. That he basically came in and we kind of taught him how the publishing business works, and we put him to work on fixing some of our paperwork, how we report P&Ls for the month, how we track royalties, and he got class credit for that. But at the same time, he came out on the other end. Both he and his instructor were very pleased with what I can't remember his instructor's name. Really nice guy, but he said, I didn't know that there was a business on campus. Y'all are actually a business. And I said, oh yeah, that's what we're doing here. It's called entrepreneurship. Yeah, it's building a business inside of an institution that's not used to having that kind of thing inside of it.
But that's the kind of can-do sort of thing that a community college can do. I mean, that's why you named the book about CVCC Nimble and Tenacious, because we're both the institution is both, but we live by that credo as well.
No question about it. I look at this type of thing, and y'all seen me do crazy stuff throughout my 18 years here, but this is one of those, hey, y'all, watch this.
Yeah, we might be the craziest of that, but we live with that. That's okay.
Yeah, and that's I love it because look at the depth of things that you've talked about this morning in terms of the connectivity that you're creating inside the college, that you're creating in the community, that you're creating nationwide, worldwide. That's not.
And we would have never been able to have done it without you, dude. I'm telling you, if you hadn't had our backs on this, we would have never. And it's not been an easy have our backs either. Yeah. You've been kind of demanding. Show me results. Show me this. And anybody out there listening who thinks we get anything we want, that's not true.
Nope.
That's not true. We don't get everything.
But it is like the Rolling Stones. You do give us what we need.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And sometimes it's a smackdown.
Well, it's a challenge because I'm putting words in your mouth and you're in the room. I think you want us to grow, and you can take a different perspective than we can here in the trenches and say, here's how you need to grow. And we've taken those marching orders seriously and tried to make them work.
Yeah, and I look at this whole process and what we've been able to accomplish with it, and I always look at things from a return on investment aspect, and this has created a huge return on investment for me personally because it has built relationships out in the community that I can then go capitalize on, whether it's
That's
political
wonderful.
figures, whether it's donors, whether it's building collaboration or partnership with different entities. And it's amazing to me how many times I hear about, well, we did this for Redhawk Publications. We really think that's great. Well, good. Now let's do this, and let's take it a step further. And I think that's an important aspect that people underestimate.
Yeah, and we really like being the door that opens to the community college to say, if you can do this, you ought to see all the other stuff we're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because there's all kinds of great stuff going on this campus. It's been like that since you've been here. Thinking outside the box. I remember the first email I ever got from you after I was hired in 2007 full time was, "Come think with me." Mm-hmm. Think with me. What are some ways that we can create revenue that we can do what we want with it, and at the same time improve the place where we live. And it took a few years, but this is from that.
Yeah, and I think it's just understanding what each individual's strengths and weaknesses are, and then how you get the people that can take those weaknesses and build them into strengths. That's the critical part of all of our development, and that's where when we're working together, we can be successful. And sometimes we don't work well together. That's when we fail. When we are pulling in the same direction and we're focused on the same things and impacting our community, this little college does some amazing things out there that people are replicating all over the country now.
Well, I will say that between the three of us, we are very blessed, very fortunate that we do get along very, very well. We're like siblings.
I'm just shocked at that, Patty.
Yeah, me too.
I do not know how you get along with these two.
No, seriously. It goes back to what you just said, strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. We all know where we fit in, and we all know our strengths and weaknesses. And there are times I am grateful for him because I'll be able able
She's
to say.
pointing at me.
Robert
Everybody.
Knight.
She's pointing at me.
Because I was talking to
Because I drive her crazy.
well,
And she drives me crazy too sometimes.
absolutely. Well, that's it. But every once in a while, we need to do a good cop, bad cop with a writer, for example, and it's like, well, it's time for Robert. It's time for the bad cop to come
Bring
in here.
Robert in.
I've tried to be nice. It's not working. Robert, you got this.
And again, I don't mean to brag, but this whole program is like an incubator of how to do business right, how to do collaborations right. And as I have told you before, I think I even wrote up an entire report that I researched back several years ago. That the art of collaboration and the agency that Richard Eller gives us to do our jobs, he does not micromanage, he does not ride your coattails to check every T and every I. He knows that you know what you're supposed to do, so he lets you do it.
That's where I learned that.
And if you have a question, you go to him and he gets you what you need. We were working on the polio book some years ago, and somebody down at the Historical Association had basically scanned some pictures, but they had scanned the whole plat of the scanner. And I told Richard, I can't use these pictures. I need each one scanned. And he just takes the pictures and takes off. And I went like, well, where did he go? Well, he drove all the way down to Newton, scanned those pictures, and brought me the scans back on the flash drive. And I thought, nobody does that. He just dropped what he was doing to go get me what I needed where I could do my job. I said, wait a minute, that's what good leadership is.
Well, I think that's the key, Robert. Is I don't think that I micromanage anybody because I believe in the talent that we have, and we have to let that talent flourish. You can't do that if you're trying to control it. And that's one of the most frustrating things as a leader that I see, even in the institution from time to time, is people trying to control the things that they don't need to control. They need to throw fuel on that fire. Let that fire burn, because that's when we have our biggest impact. I know we've got to close down this morning, but just real quick, what advice would you give somebody who's seeking to get published with an independent press?
Keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. Please make sure you have somebody peer review what you've written. You wouldn't believe how many people come in and they show me their manuscripts. And I'm like, well, what do your friends say, family say, mentors say? No one's ever read it. So yeah, submit something that you've written that someone else has read, giving you some notes. Submit it to us. There's no guarantees, but you know what? We give notes. So if we don't accept it, we'll still let you know what you can do to improve upon it, and we're willing to work with you. So that's what I have about the process of getting published here.
Mine would be, and I just discovered this recently, but I thought it's such great advice. Once you've written something and you're waiting to see if it can get published, write something else. Because if you channel all your your energy into waiting to see if it gets published, it'll drive you crazy. Yeah. So what you need is to continue that creative process. Yeah. And kind of like you said about people pouring gas on the fire to see where it goes. It doesn't always go where you want it to. No. Because when I first said to you, if you can get me editing equipment, I can get you a documentary on UNC TV, which I didn't know if I could do or not. But it turned out that it
I had confidence in you.
But we would have never have conceived that we would be here now talking about this. And so it morphs in all kinds of strange but interesting ways. I mean, that's what Robert tells me. It keeps me sharp on my writing is always surprise your reader, because if you do what they expect, they're going to put your book down. And it can go in so many different ways, but you got to let it. And I think that's what you're talking about with leadership here and every place else, that you got to let it go, because it's kind of like my dad used to say about Campbell's soup. If you ever saw how it's made, you'd never eat it. There's some things that go on here that are extremely chaotic. And at times I'm like, oh, man, is this going to work?
That's the emergency room thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, but it does.
16 projects going on at the same time, and oftentimes we just get so confused. We don't even know what we're doing. Things get misplaced. And but my advice is, go to Tasteful Beans Coffee House.
I was just getting ready to say, let's go to Tasteful Beans right now, because they've got the best coffee in the world.
That Ethiopian, if you haven't tried that Ethiopian coffee, you need to get you a couple pounds of that and take it home. But take your phone and download our submission standards from our website. They are on there. They are free. You can download them as a PDF. You can also download our catalog from there that we just got an updated catalog. And you can buy our books on RedhawkPublications.com.
Which is another great way to develop your writing, is to read other writers and see how they are doing it. Because I brought a book into Robert last week and said, why do they do it this way? And he gave me an answer to it to understand how the look of a publication is supposed to go, as well as the words that go into it.
Yeah, there are lots of old-fashioned ways of presenting books.
And we're very fortunate that Tasteful Beans actually does perform a retail outlet for us. So we've got some of our books there for reading. So
And go to our events, because we've had events at Tasteful Beans, and listen to writers and say, okay, that's what they're doing. Because in my opinion, that's the great thing about history, is it gives you this sort of learning primer on how people have done it before, so that you can figure out your own path.
Yeah, and a perfect example of talking about Tasteful Beans, and Scott Owens, who is also one of our writers, because he's a very prolific poet. When we did the Hickory book, and the Hickory book came out during COVID, Patty and I both were carrying cases of that book down there on a regular basis. Put your mask on, practice social distancing. And Julian and Scott both had told me that, and Scott was paying me checks that were, several $1,000s. He was selling copy after copy after copy of this thing. And he told me one day in passing, he says, that book kind of helped keep us in business during the COVID thing, when he had to take out all of his tables and chairs, and people weren't going out and people were afraid. But that Hickory book, along with the book that we stripped out of it, Richard's complete history of Hickory, those things sold well enough to help them keep some money in the coffers. So again, saving local businesses.
And we have to thank Leroy Lale for that, because he helped make that happen.
Yeah, Leroy did.
And we've published his memoir and the Hickory Furniture Mart and a historic home that he owned. So it's all about those connections, really.
It really is. And congratulations on the success that you all have created.
Thank you.
Because it's been the work that you've done. But we've sat here and talked long enough. It's time for y'all to get back to work, because I want to see what you're going to do next.
There's more
you
books
probably
out
got
there.
an appointment at 10 o'clock with somebody much more important than we are. So.
Thank you, Dr. Henshaw, for coming in
thank you
today.
very much.
Thank you
y'all
for coming in, and thank you out there in podcast land for listening to RedPubPod.
Can you say that 2 times fast?
RedPubPod, RedPubPod.
You got it.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah, so
RedPubPod.
Hey, y'all, watch this.
And please, please, please tell your neighbors about us. Download us from your favorite podcast places, and we will see you on the other side. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
You've been listening to a special edition of
RedPubPod, RedPubPod.
a podcast from Redhawk Publications.
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.
Can you say that